It's recording. Perfect. Okay. Phone's muted. Great. Good morning to everyone who joined us. Hi there. We will wait a few more minutes before we begin to allow everybody to settle in. So we'll begin the webinar in about 2 minutes. All right, good morning, everyone, again, and welcome. My name is Sharon Mostovoy, and I'm Growing IL's Community Manager. Today, we will discuss the funding opportunities, challenges, and barriers of setting up businesses in Africa, businesses that can help smallholder farmers increase productivity. We have our distinguished guest with us today, Tamer El-Raji, Managing Director at Acumen Capital Partners, who will discuss Africa's needs and the types of technologies that can be of interest. He will overview the financial sector in Africa. He will talk about funding mechanisms and how entrepreneurs decide which funding to raise, and investing in smallholder farmers, turning it from a liability into assets. We have Matt Davis, CFA Managing Partner and CEO at Renew. We'll discuss how impact relates to smallholder farmers from his point of view. He will discuss practical impact investing tools that exist in Africa for smallholder farmer AgTech solutions, and discuss which aspects the startup needs to take into consideration when approaching an impact investor in Africa. But before we begin, I would like to thank our partners for all their efforts, Arya Dubov, Ifat Rubin, and Alon Gilboa from JDC's TOEF program. Thank you so much. We enjoyed working with you. And I will now take a few moments to present Growing IL. So that's us. Growing IL is a governmental initiative of the Ministry of Economy, the Ministry of Agriculture, Israel Innovation Authority, and Israel Innovation Institute. We have 3 main goals. First, developing and strengthening the Israeli AgTech sector. Second, exporting innovative technologies and solutions based on global challenges, and by that, positioning Israel as a hub of innovation. And of course, last but not least, implement these innovative technologies and solutions in-house, that is, in Israel. Our unique position is that we don't have any direct business interests. We're agnostic in that sense, and we work with everybody, entrepreneurs, investors, academy, NGOs, government, agribusinesses, farmers, etc., in Israel and worldwide. We work in two main strategic channels. The first one is ecosystem development. We do that by curating events that tend to our community members' needs and challenge areas. We create tools such as our investors map, for example. We have our online community, our virtual community, our lively Facebook group and LinkedIn page, reaching to approximately 3,000 people, and our monthly newsletter going out to over 4,000 members. And connections. We connect between our members upon request, and if we see a potential for growth for each of the parties, we connect. We are a central junction of information that provides value to our members. And the second channel is open innovation processes. We connect between the supply and demand, that is, between the industry and the high tech, between startups, entrepreneurs, and ag tech companies, and the farmers and agribusinesses and other players. We create tailor-made challenge competitions, hackathons, demo days that will eventually lead to POCs, pilots, beta sites, and implementation. To sum it up, Growing IL's value proposition is that we serve as a gateway to the Israeli agtech ecosystem. We connect global entities with relevant technologies based on their needs and challenges. We create events, professional content, and a variety of opportunities to our members. And we create tailor-made open innovation processes for agribusinesses. Please join our community if you haven't yet, our Facebook group, our newsletter, our LinkedIn page, and our YouTube channel. And please feel free to always reach out to me. This is my email with any question, request, or anything of the sort. I would like now to present Mr. Aryeh Dubov, Director of Tikkun Olam Venture at the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. Thank you, Aryeh.
Thank you, Shiran. Thank you, Growing IL, for hosting this webinar today. Growing IL has created a place in the market, a platform in the market, which is the perfect place for the kind of dialogue we want to have today, which links venture builders, innovators with key actors in the ag tech and the ag market in Africa. And thank you very much, Growing IL. In the past 5 years, I've had the opportunity to meet many fascinating people who are connected to the bridge between Israel and African countries, the agriculture bridge between the two countries, people who are dedicated to improving the yields of farmers, people who are dedicated to bringing more information to farmers so they can make better decisions, people who have positions all the way along the value chain from farm to fork, who are interested in improving productivity, generating more value, and of course, improving the well-being for smallholder farmers who are among the most impoverished people on our planet today. And of all the people that I've met, I'm very excited that everyone on this webinar is going to meet two of the most interesting people that I've come across, Matt and Tamer. And they're interesting from many perspectives, but in particular today, we're going to hear about what investors, what funders are looking for at the stage of the innovation process, at the stage of the venture building process. What are investors, active investors, looking for when they come to consider literally putting their money where the ideas are best, putting their investment where they see the most potential, the most game-changing opportunities. And for that, we're looking forward to hearing Matt and Tamer's insights. Both of them represent very significant portfolios of companies, of ventures that have benefited from venture capital and from investment through in different forms. So I'm very excited we're meeting Tamer and Matt today. I'm the director of the Tikkun Olam program. It's a program that's operated by the NGO JDC, the American Jewish Joint Distribution Committee. It's a program that takes the market-based approach to innovation. We see a social challenge. In this case, we see many impoverished smallholder farmers in African countries. That's the social challenge. That because we use the market-based approach, we have another lens as well. And at the same time, we see a market failure. And we try to, wherever we can, see how a social challenge can be addressed through market mechanisms. So the Tikkun Olam program is built on that basis. We have built a platform for work in Ethiopia. We started in Ethiopia, a platform for working with farmers. We facilitate transactions between farmers and ag tech vendors. We built a finance mechanism in partnership with an Ethiopian bank to make significant finance available to smallholder farmers. In short, we are bringing in all of the private sector actors to solve the problem of connecting smallholder farmers with technology that can be transformationally beneficial for them. The TOV program is a partnership between philanthropy, with the private sector, and with the public sector. One of our major, most strategic funders is the Israeli Ministry of Economy and Industry, and they at the ministry have supported us from the beginning, and they're also very interested in us taking time to share what we are learning and to share our network with the Israeli market at large, so that more Israeli innovators and venture builders can learn from our network and learn from our experiences. And so today's seminar, Growing in Africa, a webinar, is an example of that. I want to mention another activity that TOV is promoting at the moment, which is an innovation journey. It's a kind of a virtual partnership building opportunity. In the past, we've taken startups to Ethiopia to meet with farmers, to meet with investors, to meet with potential partners. Now, under the present circumstances, where travel is more difficult, we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it virtually. So our innovation journey, which is currently being promoted and for which we've released an RFP, the innovation journey is focused on smart farming, on market linkages, on fintech and edtech. And we're inviting Israeli innovators, Israeli venture builders that have technologies, ideas in these directions to work with us, and we will build partnerships for the Israeli ventures, partnerships between Israel and Ethiopia that increase the chance that the ventures will find the right market, will find the right investors, will find the right NGO partners, whatever is necessary, increase the chance that ventures in those directions will succeed. Again, the RFP is out, and we're focusing on smart farming, market linkages, fintech, and edtech. My last point, and before we turn to Matt and Tamer, is to recognize that these are difficult times in Ethiopia and in many other countries in Africa. And Matt is in Ethiopia today. Tamer usually sits in Kenya, but he's speaking to us today from his home in Cairo. I want to recognize that these are difficult times. Our utmost concern is everyone's safety and security, and I want to wish everyone safety, health, and stability in the coming period, so that we, as individuals, as families, and as innovators and venture builders, will be able to move forward in the coming months, even under these circumstances, and build and create more value between Israel and African economies. Thank you, Shiran.
Thank you so much, Aryeh. And of course, the program we've just discussed, we'll send more details to everyone on this webinar. We'll send more details afterwards. And without further ado, I would like to present Tamer El-Raji, Managing Director at Acumen Capital Partners. Very excited to have you here today with us.
Okay.
Let me stop sharing so you can share your presentation.
Let me do that. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tamer El-Raji. First of all, I would like to thank Growing IL and JDC for inviting me today, giving me the opportunity to share what we do with such a fine group of people. I'm impressed to see so many people actually showing up. These days, we are all used to signing up, but never showing up. But we're all tired of webinars, but clearly people are excited about this one, and happy to be here. Right now, I'm based in Cairo, but we are based in Nairobi. Our team is in Nairobi, and we are expanding into West Africa. Let me give you some background about what is that I'm going to talk about today. So today, I'm going to talk to you about what we do as Acumen Capital Partners in Sub-Saharan Africa, and how we invest in agribusinesses that help smallholder farmers become more resilient to climate change. When farmers become more resilient to climate change, not only their income increase, but their income volatility decreases, and they become more resilient to those climate shocks that we are all experiencing all over the world. Some background about what we do. Acumen Capital Partners is the for-profit arm of Acumen Fund in New York City. We have an initiative, what we call the Acumen Resilient Agriculture Initiative, sponsored or funded by the Green Climate Fund, FMO, Soros Economic Development Fund, the Children Investment Fund Foundation, and 3 family offices. It's a $50 million initiative to invest in agribusinesses in East Africa, Nigeria, and Ghana. We invest, we are an impact VC fund. So we invest in early growth stage companies. Our ticket size is anywhere between $0.3 million to $4 million. So far, our sweet spot has been between 1 and 3 million. We're a fairly young initiative. We only started investing in 2020, and so far we have 4 portfolio companies. We also have what we call a technical assistance facility, which is actually meant to help our investee companies do 3 things. First, measure impact. The second one is to train farmers, and the third one is business development activities like hiring a consultant, establishing an ERP system, things that otherwise early growth stage companies wouldn't have the cash flow to do. And we target to impact 10 million people. What kind of businesses we invest in? We usually try to put them in 3 buckets: aggregator platforms, digital platforms, and innovative financial services platforms. And you'll find that technology is at the center of 3 of them. And the aggregators are the vertically integrated companies sourcing from farmers, adding value, premium processors, or they could just be pure aggregators connecting farmers to markets. Also we invest in ag tech, such as companies offering insurance to smallholder farmers, also marketplaces, etc. Last but not least, the financial services targeting farmers, such as ag microfinance platforms, as well as other digital services, again around smaller farmers. One of the things that, and I'm as guilty as anyone else, is that we always say, we do business in Africa. Well, Africa is not monolithic. Africa is huge. There is I'm sure you guys are familiar with that map that McKinsey, I think, prepared about 10 or so years ago, fitting the US, China, India, some parts of Europe, all of that into Africa to show the massive scale. However, doing business in North Africa is different than in Sub-Sahara. And in Sub-Sahara, doing business in East Africa is different than West Africa. And in East Africa, doing business in Ethiopia, as Matt will explain to us, is different than Tanzania, for instance. So each country has its, its own specificity. However, when it comes to investing in companies that become regional plays, we will talk about that. But you will see that there is an opportunity to invest in companies that actually become regional players in Africa. But why do we like Africa? And I'm personally, I have spent the past 10 years, a bit more actually, investing in the ag space in Africa, whether it's with this VC fund or private equity before that, or with the Cargill. Before that, it was all about investing in the ag space in Africa because it's a continent that has a lot of opportunities for ag businesses, and you will see startups that are growing. You will see entrepreneurs coming from all over the world coming to Africa, starting companies, and also you'll see the the large boys like the big ones like Olam, Cargill, etc. are all present in Africa. It's a growing population, growing economies. The population in Africa is young, which is it's an opportunity and challenge at the same time. But what we also like is that you see a lot of inefficiencies, and usually, as we all know, inefficiencies. Yes, it's usually they represent a challenge, but this is where investment opportunities are. However, the picture is far from being rosy. You'll see that there are political security forex risks in Africa, and also you'll see that the main challenge, people always say, oh yeah, the main challenge that corruption. We like to look at it differently. We see that the main challenge in Africa is lack of infrastructure, proper infrastructure, and limited talent pool. For some reason, okay, sorry, okay. What are the challenges and opportunities we see in the ag space, specifically around smallholder farmers? The first one is low productivity. You look at some farmers, you look at tomato farmers, for instance, in Nigeria, where some of actually the average is around 5 to 10 tons excuse me, an acre, while you'll find that farmers in California or even in Egypt or Israel, they're touching the 100 tons an acre. Of course, it's different setup, etc. But it tells you about how in the developed or more developed agriculture sectors, land is looked at as productive asset, while in most places in Africa, land is looked at as a source of food to feed the children. And that's the mindset that we are working with our investee companies to change. So the low productivity, that's an opportunity for better inputs, productivity for irrigation, productivity for agronomy support, productivity for technology to offer, to connect farmers to market, to get access to these inputs, as well as, of course, delivering the agronomy support on large scale. Lack of access to proper financing, inputs, and markets, because these farmers are not bankable. So now we see companies offering solutions how to connect these farmers to access to finance, access to inputs, access to markets, innovative financial solutions to do all of the above. We also see as a challenge the high level of waste, from harvest to markets. The waste level is very high. In some markets, it exceeds 50%, but which is an opportunity for innovative supply chain solutions, dry and cold storage solutions, for instance. However, the fact that the telecom infrastructure is fairly developed allows or poses an opportunity for leapfrogging in many sectors. We have all witnessed how M-Pesa became, the global standard in mobile payment. People are looking at M-Pesa, which was developed in Kenya, like, okay, that is cool. How can we do that? Kenyans had access to e-wallets or e-payments when actually the rest of the world were still using, cash and credit cards. Now we're seeing e-payments taking over. I recall attending a conference in Tanzania back in 2012, and people were talking about M-Pesa, and most of the people that we invited from other parts of the world were asking, okay, what is that? And when we explained to them, people were really impressed. Last year, more than 50% of the Kenyan economy, 50% of the Kenyan GDP was done through e-payments. Well, in some cases, and we have seen it, and actually in my previous life, we invested in companies that source organic ag products from Africa and exporting to other parts of the world. And main driver is, in many cases, farmers just don't have the money to buy chemicals. So the land is so virgin that it's naturally organic. So certification becomes a much faster process. And actually we see companies like that actually emerging in markets like Ethiopia, Uganda, etc. And that's another opportunity. Working with smaller farmers, a lot of people look at it as a liability. Whether they're talking to business people, government people, they always look at smaller farmers as that's the population that they are. It's poor people, uneducated, etc., etc. And so it's a long list, and it's a sad list. However, if you look at the exactly same farmers, when you give them the means, when you look at as a business owner and you look at their sustainability as part of the sustainability of your business model, the picture totally changes. And I'm using here pictures of 3 female farmers. The top one worked with a company called Sun Culture. And just as a disclaimer, Sun Culture is a portfolio company of ours. Sun Culture develops and distributes solar powered irrigation systems, and those systems help small farmers totally change the way they live. You're seeing farmers that instead of growing maize as usual in most of these places, switching to vegetables, but not only vegetables, doubling and in some cases tripling their yield of vegetables. So now you think of the cash flow of these farmers. The one down in the left, that's one of my favorites. That's a farmer and you can see that she was holding her tab, and she's actually getting technical support of how to feed her cow, better feed and better farm practices. Just these two would double milk yield for cows in Kenya, for instance. In Kenya, the average is 5 liters per day. I know that you guys sitting in Israel saying, "Oh, our cows are like 40 some, if I remember correctly, in Israel." Yeah, but that's genetic, that's better feed, that's better farm practices. Give all of that to farmers in Kenya, they will do the same. People are the same everywhere, and and we have seen farmers in Kenya actually more than doubling their yield just by having access to more water, believe it or not, just clean water, and better farm practices. Okay. As a matter of fact, farmers that work with Sun Culture, for instance, having access to more clean water, actually those farmers reported doubling. I'm sorry, on the milk side, reported 50% more milk yield for the same cows without doing anything else, just having access to more water. The one down on the right, that's one of my favorites. And she's one of many that we interviewed, and we asked about, okay, so working with companies like Sun Culture, for instance, and actually specifically in the case of Sun Culture, we asked that question about what is that you like about the product? And coming from the investment world, the first thing that we always think is like more income, right? That's the expected answer. And we say, yes, we want to hear that so that, it makes sense for our investment. It was never the first reason they like the product. Especially female farmers, first reason is, and we got that answer all the time, saying that her back doesn't hurt anymore. So she doesn't have to walk to bring water. She doesn't have to manually operate this, manual pump that we had in the Middle East and Africa for thousands of years. She now can enjoy her life without a pain in her back, literally. So quality of life, that things that something that we always think that people in developed world worry about or think about. No, it's people everywhere. Quality of life is so important. And I want to jump to the financial landscape because I know that I still have like, what, 5 minutes? Is that correct? I believe around 5 minutes. So if you look at the financing landscape, and if we look at most of our portfolio companies and our pipeline companies, you will find that they have a mix of financial instruments. Most of them, they start with, of course, their own money, friends and family, but also grants. There are a lot of grant donors in Africa. Foundations such as Gates and Shell Foundation. You'll find USAID, et cetera, et cetera. And those are grants that help those those companies actually develop their business models. And we have seen companies actually going to raise, significant equity rounds after now they have shown that their business model works and they have significant equity, so they can actually demand higher valuation. And you look at how they reach that stage, they were able to raise, actually, in some cases, millions of dollars in grants. And grant donors are out there. So they are looking for innovative solutions that actually tackle real problems that, if successful, will lead to a lot of jobs. They will lead to value creation and bringing more money to the region and developing the region itself. You'll find that debt is available. Of course, many of those companies aren't bankable at the beginning, so they don't go to banks. At a later stage, they do. But at the beginning, that is available from DFIs, from impact funds, from family offices, and you'll find many US and EU-based family offices that are fairly active in the ag space offering debt. And as I mentioned, once the company has a couple of $1 million in revenues, they can go to local banks. Well, of course, it depends on interest, etc. Some of those I would say funders, they have lower interest rate than local banks. So it really depends. And then last but not least, equity. And that's the side of the equation that we represent. And equity, you'll find equity starting from early stage nonprofit investors such as Acumen, our parent company, for instance, all the way to DFIs, angel investors, family offices, commercial VC funds like ours, and of course, PE funds as well. When the company grows and now the company is looking for, 10, 15, $20 million, now they switch from VCs to PEs, and they are fairly available for ag companies in the region. The challenge is always to find, an investable company with a business model that's scalable, and that you say, okay, if that company really hits those marks, or even 50% of those marks, then it's an exitable company. It's a company that we can find someone to buy it, because otherwise our money is locked. And that's another challenge in the region, finding those companies. However, I have to say, and I think Matt can shed more light on that, we see now more and more entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs and foreign entrepreneurs moving to the region, local entrepreneurs, where the entrepreneurship spirit, the spark is on, and starting businesses. The old business model of family businesses, mega businesses owned by families for generations, that is changing. Still there, these are the main players, but it is changing. Thank you, everyone. And for any questions, you have my email address. Feel free to reach out anytime. Thank you. I hope I didn't exceed my time.
You were wonderful. Thank you so much, Tamer. You've provided valuable information. And without further ado, let's move on to Matt Davis, who's going to present his point of view. And let me just remind everybody that we are going to have a Q&A section right after this. So save your questions. And thank you, Matt.
Great. Thank you, guys. And great job, Tamer. It's very enlightening what you were sharing. And I completely agree with you about this model here. It's a model that you see in many countries as they go through their development cycle. They're going from these major, large, tightly held family companies to a more open and active private sector. And I think that is the opportunity right now here in Africa. And What I'm going to do right very fast is just take you through a more pictorial snap of what we present to potential investors to give you kind of a flavor of that. Then I'll end with hitting a couple of the questions and then quickly get to Q&A so you guys can chime in with more specific questions. So as Tamer mentioned, and as all of you probably know, Africa is really growing. It's probably over the next 2 decades, 3 decades will be where we will see most of the global growth. So you'll see Asia starting to mature. You're already starting to see most of Eastern Europe mature. South Central America, that could be a potential growth market, but all eyes are starting to shift to Africa. Challenges on the ground, it's a very different story. First and foremost, what's happening on the minds of the governments here, because they are a major stakeholder. When you are an entrepreneur in Israel, trying to figure out how do I get on the ground, get my goods and services into the hands of those who need it most and make this a profitable venture. This picture right here is probably one of the ones you should flash in front of your eyes before you dive in, because at the forefront of most of every government's mind is job creation. You have a demographic profile real quick of the United States in 2018 in Ethiopia. And as you see, most countries in Africa have a very similar kind of demographic profile of their age, very young, very diverse population that is rapidly moving into the private sector. However, the private sector is severely underfunded and severely constrained and does not produce enough jobs. So about 10 million jobs are entering every year, the workforce, and about 3 million jobs are available. That's a 7 million job gap. And that's a statistic that was a couple of years old. It's probably even gotten more severe right now as this massive surge of potential employees enters the workforce. So that's a major thing. So next, the question that most governments say is, well, what part of the private sector creates the most jobs? And generally speaking, this was a study done here in Ethiopia, but you'll also see it in other countries. Small and mid-sized enterprises are often the segment of the economy that is the greatest producer of new jobs. However, as many people know as well, they are the most capital constrained. So large companies, they often have some good access to asset-backed lending mechanisms here in Ethiopia. Only local only local banks can lend. But then microfinance is also well covered. So right in the middle, there's this gap, and this gap they call the missing middle. And being here and investing in SMEs, and Tamer can share his perspective on this too. I think he mentioned it in one of his bullets, is everybody always talks about money, money, money. It's the capital, it's capital. We need more money into this space. Well, I would argue that actually there's 2 things that are desperately needed here. It's capital and management. So human capital, the human capital side of what is holding back SME growth and job creation, I would say is as important, if not more important, than the lack of funding. And I really loved where Acumen is moving. A lot of investment groups are moving into this space where they're saying, hey, it's not just putting money into a company and it grows, and that was the only problem. You really have to provide a wraparound service. If you're a smart investor on the ground, you're coming into this space, you have to be prepared to provide a significant, whether you call it technical assistance, whether you call it a controlling interest in the business where you're stepping in with your own management teams, whatever it looks like. Most investors that make it through the dip of pain here come out the other side realizing, wow, we've got to change up how we're investing. It's not your typical model that we would use in Israel or we would use in the United States, even Egypt. It's much more involved and much more active. So real quick, going through this whole segment of the economy is underdeveloped. That is the space that Renew, when we set out and kind of put our guiding statements up on a whiteboard for the first time, we said, we want to build in this missing middle, capital and human infrastructure, and really make that a platform by which SMEs can accelerate through this and become mature, bankable, attractive companies where we can exit. So enter Renew. Renew is made up of 3 entities. One, we have the exchange, which is really a grant-funded market development platform. We partner with the Canadian government, we partner with the US government, we partner with the Dutch government to really build up the entrepreneurial and human capital as well as financial capital infrastructure in a country such that when investors, which are our next two pillars at Renew, start to do investing, hopefully the groundwork and hopefully the process for investing is getting easier because of the work that the exchange does. Then we have the angel network, which I'll show in a moment. Tamer pointed out that in the equity world, angels are a key actor in the early stage high risk space. So we launched and founded the Impact Angel Network, which is about 170 families, mostly US, mostly Canadian, some European, that put capital to work in the companies that we invest in. And then we have a $50 million Gender Smart holding company that is taking that next stage once the angels invest and helping those companies scale up and grow. So here's a quick picture of the angel network. Here's our office right here where you see behind me. This is the exchange where we're really building. These are all CEOs of the companies that we're potentially investing in. We take them through a very rigorous training program. And then here's some work that the exchange does where we're building up local angels. This is in Ethiopia where we launched a television program to educate people on entrepreneurship and on what it means to actually have a successful investor entrepreneur engagement, because that's always a challenge. And then, of course, we are also very active in gender equality. So our holding company is promoting actively building gender balanced executive teams into every company that we invest in. So here's Prime Minister of Canada meeting with some of our portfolio companies. Here is our portfolio. So you can see we're doing quite a bit. We're sector agnostic, so we're across the board. We're skewed towards Ethiopia, although we did make our first investment in Uganda and we're about to open an office in Rwanda. So we're moving into the region. And our outcomes really back to that opening slide is really focused on job creation, increasing leverage, so making development more efficient at driving private sector capital into this part of the world, and then gender equality. So these are kind of our three big impact outcomes. So the questions that the team wanted me to kind of focus on is how does impact relate to smallholder farmers? Second was practical tools that exist in Africa for smallholder farmers. And then finally, which aspects do startups need to take? And that will be my next slide. So first on the impact and how that relates to smallholder farmers. First off, as an impact investor, so I'm someone who puts money into a company, and I have to report to my shareholders about the impact that we've created, as well as the financial performance and the financial returns that we're generating for them. Smallholder farmers are a massive way to create scale, impact at scale. So where Renew is investing, we take a very low-tech approach to our investment practice, but I'll talk about where this audience can actually really impact us as an investment firm, as well as create that impact at scale on the next slide. But we do track smallholder farmers. So we invested in a specialty coffee company here that did very well, grew very fast, and impacted thousands of smallholder farmers. And the way we track that is first off, we have a satellite farm now, we have multiple satellite farms, we've got a processing facility. But what we were really tracking is not only how many smallholders we're buying from, but how does our price that we're paying them, how is that incremental growth that they received 3 years ago relative to where they're getting now? Has that improved? Is it beating inflation? Are we actually making these smallholders wealthier? And are we helping provide them services, both non-direct business-related services, but other business-related services to help improve their yields? The answer across the board is yes, but we have a team that kind of goes out, works with the entrepreneur, really tries to capture that data and present that data to our investors. So it's really important. These types of metrics are sometimes deal specific, but generally speaking, we have a suite of impact metrics that we track, and smallholder farmers that our companies, which are usually on the processing end of the value chain, how are they being impacted? Practical tools. So I don't have a ton here, but one thing I would highly recommend for anybody that's interested is I would look at a group called ANDI. It's the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs. And I've just really found that this platform and this group, they're out of the Aspen Institute, which I think is in the United States. It's located actually in Washington, D.C. But they really do this phenomenal job of ecosystem building. So GIN, which is the Global Impact Investment Network, and Andy are really the two major platforms if you're looking to get kind of a crash course, I would say, in impact investing, where there are sources of capital for you that might not be equity or debt, but could be more of that soft capital, those grant funding that Tamer mentioned. I would definitely go to Andy first. I would sign up for their newsletters, consider getting a group of you together and becoming a member. It's one of the best returns on investment that I've seen in our space over here, and they really provide you a great platform to network with people. Which brings me to my last concluding slide, which is, if I were you, and how would I start to get involved with this space? If I was an entrepreneur in Israel, looking at this as a growth market, how would I begin getting involved? Where's the money? How can I get some of this capital? So first off, understand the motivations of the investors that you're speaking with. For me and for us at Renew, and even for our impact angels, one of the things that's so interesting and exciting about Africa right now is a fairly low competition, very inefficient markets, and the opportunity for you to be a first mover. So many people are still using methods and practices, especially in the agriculture sector, that are way outdated. You have 2/3 of the population that are employed by agriculture, 1/3 of the GDP that is supported by agriculture here in Ethiopia. 95% of the output of agriculture is still smallholder farmers. That's 5% that's only commercial. So there's a massive amount of people that are in this space, employed by this space, but very small relative comparison to what the GDP output is. So there's a lot of opportunity to introduce new technology to really capture huge market share. What we're looking for at Renew and our investors is we're looking for really good opportunities that have a disproportionate return on investment relative to their risk. So we're looking for that, like, how can we buy down that risk, put $1 million, $2 million, $3 million to work, but see a potential $50, $60 million upside. And again, understanding kind of how we're looking at brings me to my next point, which is, where do you fit in? And in my opinion, where I see really technology playing a part that it's not at all, really very low here in Ethiopia, and thankfully is working with a group that's kind of trying to introduce that, because Israel, hands down, everybody knows around the world, guys, turned a desert into one of the best producing agriculture countries in the world. And everybody is like, how do they do that? You can come here and teach and educate. But where in the process should you plug in with a group like us? And I think this is a piece where a lot of people don't get it right. We're the money, right? So we're going to invest. I might invest in a company that is manufacturing bread or manufacturing spices or something like that. Now, I'm working with cooperatives that are working with thousands of smallholder farmers, but man, the product is not great. You know, the quality issues across the board, their yields are low. I'd love to pay them more, but I have to work with so many, it's a pain for me to do that. You come to me and say, hey, I'd like to be a part of helping you design a growth and investment plan. I'm going to work with them. Part of my investment comes in and pays for your services to work with them. And then I can also bring in grant funding for you, and we can work together to impact more lives, do more, and it also benefits for me as an investor. So those types of structures, it's really, I push it back on you guys. I have not gotten any emails from anyone saying, I've got a technology that's going to change your life. And if you're looking at a company in this space doing this type of work, consider us as a vendor to support those smallholder farmers, to increase yields, to make your business better. That type of pitch, I'd be very interested to hear. And so my recommendation is to really study the investors that are working here, learn about the soft capital that's available on platforms like Andy, identify opportunities that have a good overlap with your technology, and then just start reaching out. And you're going to get a warm welcome from people here, because we're always trying to find better ways of doing simple things. And that, I think, is it. Yeah. So I hope that answers all your questions, and I'd love to hear the questions now.
Thank you so much, Matt. We've received a few questions already. One of them, I think Arya managed to answer. They wondering what Andy is, and how what is the name of that platform. So I think we got that covered. However, we do have other questions. So how do you measure your impact? I think that one is going out to you.
Yeah, okay. You want me just to answer? You want to go through one by one?
No, yeah, we'll just do one by one. So go ahead and answer that.
Yeah, so for every new, and I know Acumen has a great suite of impact metrics too. For us, the number one is jobs. So jobs created as well as
Right.
jobs sustained. So our investors want to know how many jobs did we create this year from our investments. That's primary direct jobs. Secondary jobs, which is where I would put the smallholder farmers, is another category of our impact metrics that we track, but the main one right at the center is jobs. Second to that is gender equality. So they want to know how many people and how many women and what percentage of women in positions of leadership in our companies are there. Is it 20%? Is it 30%? Is it 50%? Our target's 50%. So they want to know that. And then there's some other kind of secondary metrics that we track, but I think overall we have about 8 that we're tracking quarterly and report quarterly on. And those smallholder farmers are one of them, definitely.
Okay, great. We have another question. How do you see the middle gap of financing after donors, seed funding from angels, etc., being addressed in Africa AgTech? Whoever wants to jump in, feel free. I see, hold on, we have more questions coming in. What was that? Let me see.
Tamer, do you want to take that one, by the way?
Sure. Yeah, we see this happening every day, and of course it's not one size fits all. Yeah, have we seen companies being able to switch from friends and family / grants to receiving commercial VC money and then growing? Yeah, absolutely. Have we seen companies stuck in that grants receiving? It's a nice spot for some people because it depends on some are after wealth generation, some after just nice income, and in some cases the entrepreneurs like it so much and they're just trapped into that grants receiving model. And in some cases, just for all fairness, it's the business model itself. The business model itself is sustainable so long as it receives grant money. And even you will find some people putting the grant money as part of their revenues, while we always tell entrepreneurs, yeah, that's other income that should not even captured in your EBITDA, because that's not what you are in the business to do. You're not in the business to receive grants. So we have seen different models, but it's only when entrepreneurs that have the discipline to say, okay, I'm getting this grant money to prove my business model, to have my prototyping done, and then once I have that, I'm switching to commercial money, to more commercial money, and that's where success is. Matt, have you seen anything different?
No, and I think you're spot on, and I would just recommend like always be selling and always be raising, because one thing I see a lot of companies do is they go to market when it's a little too late. I mean, I know that's like, shut up, man. I mean, we're always raising, but actually, I just see a lot of companies run in. You need to plan, especially for Africa, even if you have that on a slide. Immediately your risk profile is going to go up, and so yeah, it's I think really critical for anybody that's trying to impact this part of the world to have a very strong key messages of why they're hedging risks, and just really have a almost dedicated person in their company that is full-time trying to go out, raise capital, look for capital. Impact investment firms are not all created equal. There's a lot that are all over the world, and yeah, you really got to do your homework beforehand to find out where to go. But yeah, I just see people running out of cash when they should have been planning 12 months ahead and raising. They're coming to us now, and it's almost too late, which is a bummer.
So I think there's another question that relates to that is, and it's a good question and very relevant, is how will the post-pandemic rural insurance scenario be?
How will the post-pandemic, what, where is it?
Rural insurance, and that's one of the questions that we received in advance.
Rural insurance.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they refer to the farmers insurance or.
I have no idea.
All right.
All right.
No, it's okay.
That one? Because
other question.
I don't know, because the question could be around smallholder farmers insurance, like crop insurance. And we are seeing more and more technology companies getting into insurtech. It's a very hot space right now. Actually, there's a company in Kenya, Pula, just closed a Series A round, and they raised $6 million. And there are more that are actually raising capital as well. It's a holy grail. Whoever figures this one and can make money out of it, investors will make a lot of money, because insurance companies are looking for a way to crack that nut. How can they insure, these tens of millions of smaller farmers while they are so fragmented and the risk is high? And technology jumps in when it comes to weather prediction, et cetera, so that you can have weather indexed insurance for germination and for yield. So it is, if that was the question, it's a very hot space right now, and we are actively listening to entrepreneurs in that space.
Thank you, Tamer. More questions here. How do you look at market access risk, and what type of mitigations would you be expecting to have? Awkward silence.
Go ahead, Tamer. I'll
Sure.
follow up on your thoughts.
Sure. So, oh gosh. So we always look at the micro risks and the macro risks, of course. The micro risks when it comes to the company itself. One of the main risks, as we discussed earlier, is execution, which depends on people. Sometimes you have an amazing entrepreneur, but that entrepreneur is the I can do it all kind of entrepreneur, and that's a huge risk. Because what if that entrepreneur decides to go to the beach, one day? What happens to the business? Decides to retire or whatever. So that's the execution risk is a big one usually that we usually look at, building the team, etc. We always look at the forex risk, for instance, and if the company is the company importing a lot of its equipment or a lot of its inputs, what happens if the Kenyan shillings depreciates? How would that affect the company's revenues in dollars, because we're investing in USD? So if the company is growing at 10% every year and the currency is depreciating at 10% every year, well, it's a great story to tell on the company side, but not so great story to tell on our side. We always look at political risk. Is the country stable or not? Is that region in the country stable or not? Because you can look at a country like Nigeria and say, yeah, it's fairly stable. But then if you are doing business in the north, then you start saying, okay, well, is it safe to go there? How stable it is, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that we also look at as investors is, can we get our money out? Like if we invest and things go, crazy and we all make money on paper and everybody's happy, can we get our money out of the country? That's another risk we look at. Matt, I'm sure you guys have your long list as well, right?
Yeah, you've nailed them all. On the market access one too, it's so severe here that we've actually had to set up offshore companies that are dedicated to working with our portfolio to help them enter markets, because their current capacity and just understanding of how the market works and everything is it's fairly limited. It's also a currency hedging strategy. I'm sure you know that, but Yeah, that too has been something that is probably one of the biggest challenges that we see is do our companies know how to actually get their product to market fast, efficiently, and at the quality that at least is competitive at a price that's competitive. And more often than not, the answer is no. We're actually seeing prices here for some of our products in the international market significantly higher than other countries just because of just misinformation, market asymmetries, and all sorts of crazy things. Logistics is also another huge issue. So yeah, there's a lot of problems.
Wonderful. We are running out of time, but I think two last questions that are important to ask. So one of them is, do you work with companies who are representing third parties under some exclusivity for the region and already present in the region? If they want to establish a business which meets some of the IN sustainable goals while creating additional jobs and gender equality, as well as promoting small farmers? That is one question. Hold on one second. And the other question is, where was that? I'm sorry. Can projects in South Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, or in Tanzania be funded? So, so the first
the answer
question.
to the first one is, for me, no.
Okay.
And the second question is, yeah,
Maybe.
if it's in, maybe. I have to see the deal for Uganda, but yeah.
Yeah, same here.
All right. Well, I would like to thank all of you, Aryeh, Tamer, and Matt, for joining us today. Providing your valuable input to our entrepreneurs and ag-tech startups. Thank you so much. And to the audience, thank you for joining us today. We will send the presentations and their emails and all the content that was here today. Thank you so much. And of course, to our partners, Tove, and thank you so much. See you next time.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye. Stay healthy.
Stay healthy.